Babylon of our day. It is wicked to the core. All the sins we're dealing with in mainstream, rooted out of California. New York's none. Look at Washington State. Look at Oregon State. And you start seeing these, but do we weep over souls dying and go, you know what we do? We do exactly what we do. Oh, they're a bunch of idiots out there. And you know what? You're right. You're right. But people, we need to get burdened for those around us as well as those overseas. Not the financial. If you don't believe me, listen. How many of y'all can watch a St. Jude commercial? They bring out them little bitty kids and they tear your heart out of your chest and they bounce it on the floor. And they know what they're doing. But you know what? A lot of those children will get cured from cancer and die and go to hell because they never met Jesus Christ. We don't get burdened at that part. We get burdened at seeing the physical affliction. We need to get burdened at what they're actually going through spiritually. How many children will die in America before they're 18 years old, and most of them, and it's sad to say, in the inner city will never walk into church? To prove it to you, if you play in the NFL this year, you cannot go to church. Yep, they voted. The league voted on that. Players Association agreed with it. So if you play in the National Felon League, you can't go to church anymore. Don't give me those options, because I'm going to be on headline news when I tell you what I think about you. Trump does not speak the truth blunt. I'll show you what blunt really is. A bunch of atheists, communistic, racist bigots is all they are. And if you ask me later, I'll tell you exactly what I think about them. That is all they are. Don't get burdened by their need poverty. Get burdened by their need spiritually. There is almost a drive-by shooting every day in Shreveport. There was 5 killed last night in Chicago. They just better be glad in Chicago they can't hit, because in one weekend there was 114 shot and only 11 got killed. If that would have been down south, there'd have been 114 shots, 121 dead. Am I right or wrong? They just better be glad people in Chicago shoot like this. Don't come down here, because it ain't going to work down here. But isn't it sad we get concerned about the physical and not the spiritual? These broken home children that are going to be passed back and forth and never have any stability at home will never meet Jesus Christ. That ought to break our heart every time we think about it. But what are we doing to reach them? Something we need to be burdened with. But Lord, my checkbook says there's not enough money. Stop looking at your checkbook, start looking at the need. Go to Matthew 9. I didn't mean to do this. We're going to flip through anyway. You need to see this. Notice verse 36. But when he, Jesus, saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers unto his harvest. We need to see the need and pray that God will send missionaries. How does missionaries get sent? They got to be called. We're probably going to look at that tonight. They got to be called. They've got to be commissioned, ordained, then they're sent. But it takes money for them to go. Notice as we go through the text, notice in verse number 9, back in John 6, the lunch of a small lad. That's exactly what the Bible called him. There's a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves, 5 little bit. Now, people, listen. These are not my wife's biscuits. My wife makes biscuits. What they call the old cat head biscuits. Trust me. 1 biscuit, cheese and sausage, and you're good. You don't need 5. Throw an egg on it, you'd probably be lucky to finish the whole biscuit. People, these are little bitty barley loaves. And must have been fishing with me. Got little bitty fishes in it. 2 small fish. But he's still looking at, but what are they among so many? Now, Andrew was one that was always bringing somebody to Jesus Christ. He always did that. But notice he said, what is that among so many? God, don't you understand? It's nothing. My $5 a week is nothing till God gets involved. Then he blesses it. Then he multiplies it. Then he sends it. And now you got missionaries on the field that you have part in. So one thing I love about missions, you can get in missions real cheap. This is not a retirement plan that you've got to donate $2,000 a year to. It's not a financial plan you got to donate $2,000 a month to. This is one God lays on your heart you give, and you have just as much part as somebody that's given $500 a week. Sure you do. Because you're doing what God has told you to do. You have just as much. And when those letters come in and it says 5 saved and 10 saved and 20 saved, those are added to your account for what you've done. Those are great. Man, that's the greatest thing in the world to be involved in. Remember the old widow that went by? She passed in the widow's mite. Jesus said of her need, of her want, of her daily need that she had, she cast in everything that she had. She didn't look at the next meal. She looked at the Savior. Now see, this is what God does. My wife put it inside the bulletin. If you look at Luke 6 and verse 38. Now, Luke 6:38 is a whole sermon by itself, so we're going to cover it real quick. Notice what he said. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Give, and God said it's going to be given unto you. Now, notice the type gift you're going to get. Good measure. God's going to scoop the scoop in and make sure it's full. Pressed down and shaken together. God's going to pack that blessing just as full as he can pack it for you. Then he said it's going to be so full it's going to run over. Now notice what he said. And running over shall men given to your bosoms, for the same measure that you meet withal, it shall be measured you again. So you turn around and you give, and you, whatever it is you put on that envelope, and you go through, and you have 2 blowouts on your car at the same time. And you go home and you have no money at all. But people, a car right now is pretty much a necessity. So I have right to go before God to say, dear God, please, I have a need in my life. You know I have to go back and forth to work. You know I've got to visit. You know I got to do these things. Lord, I need 2 tires. I can get up and expect God to bring those tires to me. Now, he may do it several ways. In this verse, he said, shall men give unto your bosom. So I give to God, and I walk by Cody. Hand me that paper back. And Cody reaches in and hands me something. I get home, open it up, and realize, oh, there's my tire money. I need 4, by the way. Anyway, I got something to do. But anyway. God gives a lot of people to give to us. Or we go to the grocery store and everything we need is on for half price. What is God doing? God's giving back to you. Or you're like Daniel and you go down to the post office and you come back with a double arm load full of bread that people have put on the counter to get rid of. See, God meets your needs so many different ways. But don't be surprised if somebody reaches out and says, hey, God laid this on my heart. There you go. And they walk off. And you might not never know that person. I have been given, truthfully, people, I'm being honest, I have been given money by people I've never seen in my life. I did a wedding one time, in-house. It was, the weather was horrible, if you will. And we went over, we had to do it inside, and it was only limited yet. And the cameraman was there, and he kept messing with me back and forth. He said, I want to give you a Baptist handshake. He said, just want to let you know I'm praying for you. And he put a piece of paper in my hand, and I leave, and I just stay in my pocket. I don't even know what it is, don't care. And I come home. And I started counting Ben Franklin's. I've never seen that man before, and I ain't never seen that man since. You know what I needed at that time? A couple of Ben Franklins. You know what God gave me? A couple of Ben Franklins. Don't be surprised when God gives you because you need it. Why? You were faithful to give to God of what you didn't have. And God turns around and blesses it back to you. And I'm going to finish this last thing real quick. Notice in verse number 11, and we've already covered this, so I'm just going to hit it real fast. Look at verse 11. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were sat down, and likewise of the fish, as much as they would. And as he broke it, it continued to grow and go forward, and it reached that whole multitude. 5,000 men plus women and children, probably as many as 20,000 people in that crowd. And Jesus took a little boy's lunch and reached him. We sit here and we think, preacher, I don't have any money to amount to anything. Join the club. I don't think there's anybody in here that could go 6 months without a paycheck. Most people in our society is 6 weeks from bankruptcy. I'm just being honest, people. We're 6 weeks from bankruptcy. So God's not looking for $100,000 from you. God's just looking for whatever he's laid on your heart. I've seen children get started with 25 cents a piece, 25 cents a week. Some start at 50. Some start at $1. I've seen adults get started at $1. I've seen some do 2, 3, 4, 5. Some do 10, some do 20, 50. Whatever God's laid on your heart, people, it's not you by yourself, it's us as a group. And then it's us as a group getting missionaries that are financed as well as other churches. And they go around the world and carry the gospel to those who have never heard. People, that's what this is all about.